Everybody good? All right, well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. I want to give you some follow-up information on two critical incidents, one taking place on Sunday, May 29, and the other on May 30. I will start with the one on Sunday, May 29th. You have already been briefed by way of a press release, but hope to provide more information. At approximately 11:16 hours, officers responded to the 800 block of Salida Drive in the Heights regarding reports of a male walking the neighborhood armed with a handgun. That man was later identified as Billings resident, 44-year-old Robert Jans. Additional information was that Jans was knocking on doors trying to get people to come outside. At the time, it was unknown what he wanted. Calls came to the police department, while a few took photos of Mr. Jans and posted it on the police department Facebook page. Officers arrived shortly thereafter, but were unable to get into a position to detain Jans before he retreated into his residence at 881 Salida. Inside the residence were 4 family members, 1 adult female, 2 juvenile females, and 1 juvenile male. The armed Jans refused to let them leave the house. Police Department hostage negotiators, SWAT, Yellowstone County Sheriff's Office SWAT, and Police Department EOD were activated and responded to the scene. Early communication with Jans resulted in the release first of the children and then of the wife about an hour later. In speaking with Jans's wife, officers learned that he struggled with some mental illness, held anti-government sentiments, and was afraid that the government was going to take his guns. Jans reported to have several guns in the house, some of them rifles, and that they were posted at different locations around the house. And by posted, I mean firing positions. For several hours, negotiators worked to resolve the situation. Jans refused to come out, was clearly distrustful of staff on scene, made demands to meet officials face to face. At one point, the incident commander commented to me several hours in, he didn't think that this was going to end well. At approximately 4:30 p.m., SWAT initiated a calculated destruction tactic and removed a front portion of the house. When the front was open, officers could see a scoped rifle on a table and that Jans had knelt or laid down on the living room floor. It was obvious to officers that Jans was laying in ambush. Shortly thereafter, SWAT deployed gas in the upper and lower levels of the house, forcing Jans to move to the garage. He was immediately confronted by SWAT officers who fired a less lethal shotgun beanbag round. Jans was hit, and officers quickly moved in to control him, ending the incident without injuries to either officers or any other residents. Jans was taken to the hospital to be evaluated for an impact injury to his torso. A subsequent search of the residence resulted in the recovery of multiple firearms. Robert Jans was charged with 4 no injuries to officers or citizens, and only minor injuries to Jans. That is a remarkable feat, given Jans' state of mind, his believed intentions, and the situation that officers were facing. Second, the incredible professionalism, creativity, bravery, and courageous actions by officers on scene who clearly put lives of others before themselves in resolving this. Barricaded situations have increased significantly for us over the years, and they present our officers with tactical dilemmas and very few ways to effectively handle the problem. This situation lasted approximately 5 hours. It adversely affected a residential neighborhood. The nature of the firearms present created a significant risk to citizens for blocks in all directions. And when it was over, and thanks to the officers present, Jans was taken into custody alive and with minimal injury sustained from police force. Officers engaged in this operation accomplished their mission safely while demonstrating considerable restraint and commendable respect for human life. Unfortunately, the residents sustained major damage, but ultimately set the stage to make the arrest possible. I think what I will do is wait for questions till I get done with the second one. We can handle them all together. Probably be the easiest way. Okay. The second part of this briefing is to provide you information on a sequence of events that culminated in an officer-involved shooting last night at approximately 11:07 p.m. in the 1900 block of Burnstead Drive. I'll provide information on police procedures and evidence relevant to the case that will give you and the public a better understanding of what we know took place and what we know right now. We are in the very early stages of the investigation. It could take some time to complete. Our understanding may change as additional evidence is collected, and we will update as needed. At approximately 11 p.m. on May 31, officers attempted to stop a silver passenger car in the area of 6th and Avenue C for traffic violations. The car briefly stopped, and a passenger got out and fled the area on foot. The car then fled from officers. Officers did not pursue, but noted that it was driving recklessly and erratically. Officers at different locations throughout the downtown area reported seeing the car speeding and blowing stop signs. The last reported sighting was at 11:06 p.m., where it was seen turning off North 22nd into an alley on the south side of Burnstead Drive, and it was headed east. An officer happened to be on the east end of the alley and attempted to get into position to deploy spike strips. At the time, he was the only car in the immediate area. As the suspect approached the patrol car at the east end of the alley, he crashed, causing some front-end damage. Not sure of the timing, either simultaneously or shortly thereafter, the suspect fired multiple rounds through his windshield into the driver's side windshield of the patrol car. The officer ducked. In doing so, he accelerated and rammed the suspect's car, disabling it. The officer, who was grazed in the shoulder, backed out of the alley onto Burnstead Drive and returned fire. I do not know how many rounds he fired at that point. Immediately after the shots fired call, other units arrived and took up positions behind the car and on Burnstead Drive, effectively blocking escape from all directions. Officers ordered the suspect to throw down the gun and surrender, but were met with refusals and profanity. Additionally, the suspect was spinning his tires trying to drive away. After approximately 3 to 4 minutes of giving commands, officers heard the slide of a gun being cycled and saw the suspect sign himself with the cross and point to the sky. Shortly thereafter, the suspect got out of the car, firing multiple rounds at the officers behind him. Officers immediately returned fire. The suspect was hit, collapsed in the alley next to his car. When it was safe, medical personnel were escorted to the scene, attempted life-saving efforts, but the suspect died of his wounds. Aside from the first responding officer, no others were hit, but the suspect rounds hit a patrol car and a ballistic shield one of the officers was carrying. There were no injuries to any bystanders or other citizens. The initial shots fired call generated a large response from the 2 on-duty shifts. The shooting involved 3 sergeants and 10 officers, a total of 13. They fired multiple rounds from handguns, shotguns, and rifles. At this time, I do not know the number of rounds fired by each officer, the number fired by the suspect, how many times the suspect was struck, body location, nor the number of hits to BPD cars or equipment. We will learn all of that information and follow-up investigation. On the ground near the decedent was a semi-automatic handgun, and another was located in the car. What you see on the screen up there is a it is a picture of a similar firearm. This is not the actual firearm, but it's one that is just like it. This is a replica of what we found. During with a Billings address. He is well known to local law enforcement, has a significant criminal record, and wanted for probation violation. The shooting is being investigated by our detective division and agents from Department of Criminal Investigations from Department of Justice. They will ultimately assume the lead in the case. The initial officer was treated and released for a minor gunshot wound, which was a graze to his shoulder. Per policy, all the officers are in officer-involved shooting protocol and on administrative leave. The police department and DCI will conduct a very thorough investigation, both criminally and administratively. It's a complicated case, simply by the magnitude of the involvement. There are many witnesses to neighborhood audio and video footage. We have body and in-car camera video to review and significant forensic evidence. When complete, DCI and for review. Because we were where we were at in relation to the complexity and magnitude of this case, I'm not releasing the officers' names just yet. I will do that sooner more than later, but we're very, very early on, and it's a large, complicated case. I will update that information when we're a bit further along in the investigation. This is a very dangerous situation, and we are fortunate no officers were seriously injured or killed. I am relieved that no citizens were injured as well, and my thoughts are with all those that are affected. And so with that, I will, that closes my formal remarks, and be happy to answer questions. Where do you want to go first?
So all 13 of these police are on leave.
Correct.
Leave. How do you staff around? You got 13 off, you got
6 from before.
6 from before.
We got people on vacation. We got other people that are sick and wounded and off having babies. Yeah,
How do you staff
we're hurting for bodies. I have an application if you'd like to come along. Well, I credit. I've got the operations captain working with us, lieutenants. Fortunately, we're getting some people freed up. For example, we have 8 SROs that'll be done. So we may be pushing them into service. Specialized positions such as STEP, our street crimes unit. Maybe some of those assigned to a task force might be pulled off to handle patrol duties. So yeah, but we're certainly looking to make sure that we can field a shift. So right now we are in dire straits. I will say that when this took place last night, I think we had 1 officer left. The sheriff's office was very gracious to come in and help us with stuff, and I know that continues on now. We have a similar offer from the Highway Patrol to help us with things. Obviously, kind of limited on what they can do, but it's a body, it's a uniform, and we can do what we need to do with that. So we will be flexible, we will be nimble. And we will get through this. I'm hoping that within a week that the first set of shooters will have cleared the preliminary protocol, and we will get them back to work, so that'll be helpful. And then 2 weeks following that, because that's generally, if everything is fine, we don't have any issues, Generally, we stand them down for around 2 weeks, so then 2 weeks following that, the others hopefully will come back.
So just to clarify, 1 week off is protocol, then 2 weeks, okay.
No set, just as a general timeline for me, it's 2 weeks.
Okay.
I very rarely let anyone come back before 2 weeks, and we have had people that they're not ready to come back. Nothing says 2 weeks is the date. If they need more time, they get more time.
Okay.
So,
Now, when this guy crosses himself, points to the sky, it seems like the last three really wanted to end it that way. Are these, do you view these as maybe suicide by cop? The last three were all kind of wagging their guns, kind of looking, hoping it'd end that way, it seemed like.
yeah, certainly. I mean, that's, if you want to elicit a use of force from police, pointing a gun at them is going to do that. In this particular case here, this is very quickly evolving. It's dynamic. We're not really trying to determine what the mental state was, and whether there was other tools applicable. The fact of the matter is, he fired at officers, hit one, and then fired at others. And very lucky, by the grace of God and training and all that, we don't get hit. We got our equipment hit, and a person holding a ballistic shield had the shield hit. So
What was the original stop for?
I think it was either speeding or a stop sign.
Oh, so it wasn't a warrant?
No, I don't.
A traffic stop?
No, it was just a simple traffic stop. The level of suspicion increases when we have a passenger bail out, then refuses to comply with the lawful order of a law enforcement officer stopping for a traffic stop. There was discussion. We do believe it may have been a vehicle that the sheriff's office had a pursuit with earlier. And so, that's all getting the suspicion up. But up until the point we fired at the officer, we have a multitude of traffic offenses until we know who we're dealing with.
Can I ask you, when was the last time a Billings police officer has been hit by fire from a suspect?
Nobody's been shot outright. They hit with fragments from wall, a bullet will hit or something, things of that sort. Am I missing something back there? You guys are, I don't think we've had anybody been directly hit with gunfire.
So this is a first?
This would be the first time, yeah. And this is my time. Well, we had a line of duty death in '86, I believe it was. So Alex Mavey. So yeah, that would be one. But as far as getting wounded, yeah, no.
Hey, to the original, or the first case you were discussing.
Can I just hit the
Yeah.
map overview real quick, Matt? Make sure
sure.
we understand where we're talking about here. And then we'll move on to that other one.
Do you want to go to this one, Chief, or the?
Yes, no, we'll go to shooting, and we'll, just so they kind of get an idea. Okay, here's a general overview, and so this is Burnstead Drive. Kind of runs in a little semicircle. The Burnstead apartments are on both sides. For reference, when the ditch gives way, it's right here. Okay, so that would have really compounded our issue if that happened. So the decedent in this case entered the alleyway here and traveled up to this area right here is where he encountered the first officer. The first officer took rounds because he was up on the street right there, and when he was getting shot at through the windshield, he leaned over, hit the accelerator, moved forward quickly, rammed the suspect vehicle, put it in reverse, and then reversed back out onto Burnstead, very similar to where this vehicle is right here, and then was able to return fire himself. In the meantime, all the other responding officers, because we have a shots fired call, and we have a message that an officer's been hit. He did say he was okay, but nonetheless. So now everybody's coming. They position themselves up on top here, and this is probably going to be 8 to 10 feet of vertical elevation from where the alley is lower, the street being higher, and then you had units that came in from behind, effectively blocking any type of escape for this. He was trying to continue to go. Again, the tires were spinning. And so when he gets out of the car, he gets out, turns to his left, and he fires at officers that are positioned back here. So we have hits to the windshield of another patrol car, and then we have hits, at least one hit on a ballistic shield to officers that are stationed back here. Once that happened, you have officers up top, officers down here that fire. 13 of them, multiple rounds.
That's a pretty quick maneuver by the officer who had been
Absolutely.
shot, yeah. Was that just something that within your realm of training, or that he did as...
Well, your realm of training is to get out of the kill zone.
Yeah.
And so, if that's what it was, that's what it was. It worked for me, worked for him, and a good move. Whether that's what he was thinking, I better ram him first, or whether it was just happened, I don't know. Irrelevant to me. We got out of the kill zone and we're able to re-engage and establish some sort of control of responding officers. So nice job on that respect there. Obviously, we're 11:30 at night. A lot of people out watching. Those are additional interviews, additional people that we need to talk to about what they heard, what they saw, things of that sort. We always check the neighborhood canvases for Ring doorbell cameras and anything to augment our video evidence on that. So again, it happened at 11:30. By the time we get rolling, it's 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. So we're early in this. So that's why we're doing what we're doing. So questions on that one before we move on?
You say he's got a really long record. What kind of criminal past?
I heard a lot of assaultive type behavior. I didn't look at it, but
Other gun crimes?
I don't know.
Is it typical for that area to have that sort of...
No, it's not typical for any area in Billings to have this type of actions and behavior. And this is what is so concerning to me, is that we're starting to see, people that have little regard for property, certainly for people's lives, and lives are cheap. When you would, endanger everybody by, the way you drive, and then you, take shots at officers, you have multiple firearms with you, and you engage in this type of behavior. This is troubling. This is troubling. And, the question is, what am I going to do about it? Well, this is difficult. So we'll keep working. But right now, I got 13 officers that were victims of a violent crime. They were assaulted. Their life was threatened, and they reacted appropriately and accordingly. And so now the admin process will go. It takes a while, but I'm very, very fortunate that we're not burying an officer right now. Very happy.
Is there any counseling for the officers?
Absolutely. Yeah, part of the admin downtime is critical incident debriefing. We have peer counselors at the time of the incident, this one was a little bit difficult because there are so many, but we partner them with somebody. Basically, somebody that's not involved is responsible for them, essentially. So they're going to be their partner, take them home, get them places, all that type of stuff. So they're never left alone, never just thrown their car keys and say, drive home, we'll talk to you later. Well cared for. And we have programs down the road to support that as well. So.
What about the rest of the department, for the officers who weren't involved but are still on staff and work with all of these other officers all the time? Not only are you down people, but is there a greater emotional toll that this takes on your entire department?
Yep, they are eligible for the same services as anybody else. They are invited to their own critical incident debriefing. We generally have one for the ones that are involved specifically, but those on the peripheral area. Our dispatchers, for example. Officers get to go and see, they're listening to stuff. So we're very mindful that it's very traumatic for them to listen to, officers' voices rise and fall with stress and hear the gunshots and not be able to do anything. You're on the radio. So, yeah, we're very, very mindful of that. Again, our peer counseling program really is taking off right now and pays close attention because they're closer to the troops than I am, and more. They're going to talk to them or they're going to talk to me. I'm going to get I'm doing fine when they may not be. And so we're past the suck it up stage, and we're mindful of mental health and mental issues. So don't want to lose officers for that.
Chief, can you say how long the officer was hit has been on the force?
Off the top of my head, I don't have that. So we had 3 sergeants that were involved in this, and he was one of them. So we had to have at least enough time on to qualify to be a sergeant. So 7, 8.
At the same time this thing was going on, there was a shooting that SO had on Garden Avenue that came into the city, then the vehicles came into the city. Do you know anything about that? I
know nothing about that. I know there were a couple cross calls, for example, for some reason. And again, a lot of people we deal with live in that area, so you had vehicles headed up to Bernstead area, running right in the middle of a large police contingent. And so we were getting info, they're coming up here. One was related, one was not. Somebody was fighting with their girlfriend and was trying to get there to, tell her he loved her, but we couldn't let him go past. And so that, of course, raises our concern with stuff. But nothing that I know of was correlated or tied together with stuff. All right, we all good with that one? Let's go back to the other one, please, Lieutenant. Okay, so you can see where Salida is. This is up there, a little bit east of Skyview. Very dense residential area, wood frame structure. So we're in close quarters with our neighbors. Again, as I indicated, some of the information we were receiving of the weapons that were on scene, including the things that we had, can go a long way and can go through a lot of stick houses. And so we need to be very, very careful on making sure that didn't break out into the community. And to my knowledge, and I haven't heard otherwise, from the incident commander, the neighbors were great. They were cooperative. They were, good about staying out of the way. We didn't get peppered with extra calls. Is that accurate there? Yeah. So we greatly appreciate the neighborhood allowing us the time, the space, and the grace to do our work. And it's not like on TV. We're not going to get it done in 45 minutes with commercials. We apply time, isolate the problem, apply time, and then let it work out as long as that we need to. And on a Memorial Day weekend and the police are telling you to stay in your house for the whole weekend, that could tend to raise some hackles up. But kudos to the neighbors. We appreciate the support. So you can see the very difficult tactical layout that our officers were dealing with. Close quarters, a barricaded subject, of course, has all the advantage. Number one, it was his house, so he knew the layout, knew where things were at, had the high ground, for example, and really put our officers at a disadvantage. And this is where I say these situations are a tactical dilemma on how to handle them. But what I am so incredibly proud of and impressed was the creativity and the tactic that has really come to the forefront. I mean, it's not anything new, but becoming more or used more often as an industry standard is the calculated destruction. And we essentially are removing the barricade and the cover and exposing somebody. And then 9 times out of 10, they're going to give up when that goes away, or sometimes they fight it out. I think that the tactics employed here were absolutely spot on. It was administered as gently as it possibly could, minimal damage, and the result was forcing the suspect into a position where we could use less lethal. And at the end of the day, we didn't kill anybody. And that is very important in this particular situation. Aside from all the work to get the house opened up, all that, the real we've started using these beanbag rounds and used effectively the other day at the Fireside Inn, basically disrupting things briefly. But here's what it looks like, and when we go off camera here, I'll let Lieutenant Becker, he's our guru and instructor on it, explain it, how it works and what it is we're doing. But again, this is our yet another tool in our toolbox for de-escalation and less lethal options. If we didn't have this, we're relegated to chemical agents, pepper spray, and a baton. And so more tools in the toolbox, more less lethal tools in the toolbox, give us the opportunity to resolve situations like these peacefully and without fatalities. And at the end of the day, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Yes, sir.
You described this destructive tactic. What you punched a hole in the house?
Yep, certainly. We punched a big hole in the house. So we used the armored vehicle, which we call the Bear. It has attachments that you can put on the front. You basically can grab onto things, or you can poke holes in things and rip things off. So again, what we're talking about, a stick house. And so I'm going to guess it came off pretty neatly and exposed. So, doing research, and when I talk to our staff, our contemporaries, especially in the bigger cities, paying millions and millions and millions of dollars to remediate a house when they fill it full of gas. And we've had the same situation. It was almost a total renovation in Rimrock West because of the gas that went in there. So we have minimal gas here, and we have minimal structural damage. And so from a financial liability standpoint, much more reasonable to deploy that tactic. That being said, it's effective. It is totally effective. That when we remove the subject's barricade and cover, they lose the propensity to fight for the most part, because they no longer have that protection.
Was there any other indication in your investigation why he was trying to get people to come outside?
No, I don't. I don't, again, we have indication of, some possible mental issues. Them and
Was he under the influence of anything?
not that I know of.
When you find an arsenal of weapons in the civilian's position and they have an incident like this, is there any precedence for the sheriff's office or other law enforcement to take those from him? Because it could be upsetting to neighbors to know they had a neighbor with a bunch of guns who's ready to,
Yeah, we take them.
yeah.
Yeah, we take them into evidence and understand just because this is a dynamic situation is rolling, we are still need to make sure that if we're going in houses making arrests, we need to have search warrants, we have to have all that stuff. And so if we go in based on a search warrant, it's evidence, we will seize it, and then the judge is going to determine whether it gets released to family or destroyed or whatever the case may be. But if you're getting at that we're just going to leave him there because he's in jail, ain't going to happen.
Do you know how many weapons came out of the house?
I don't know the total number. Do you remember, Captain?
I heard upwards of 30.
Oh, shit.
30-ish.
Can I ask a question, Chief? I mean, this is more for the community. With the recent events that hurts people, the community they've grown up in and have grown to love to see what's happening, what can you tell them about, can they do anything? Can they help in any sort of way?
Well, this community is still great. It is safe. It's a wonderful place to raise a family, to move your business to buy a house or do whatever. These are isolated incidents. The people, especially when we get into homicide situations or the bad assault, they know each other. It is the population that are victimizing each other. We very rarely have random acts of violence. Not saying it doesn't happen, but it's pretty rare. So unfortunately, we have some bad people in the community. They are addicted to drugs. They are addicted to alcohol. They commit crimes. Some of them are violent, and they're extremely unpredictable. And so that's when we generally run into them and end up with situations like this. I would be shocked if the decedent from last night's officer-involved shooting did not have methamphetamine and fentanyl or a combination on board. It's present in almost everything that we see, and it's the driver of most of our crime and specific violence. And so again, this is a big story, but it's a very small population that is doing it, and then we're working hard to intervene on the front end before things like these happen. And that's a whole nother press conference on, we know it's causing the problems, what are we doing to try to break that chain? We're pretty good on distribution, on supply, on use, but how about treatment? How about demand? So those are the things that we're working with our social partners on. In the meantime, we just need to stay on top of stuff like this. When we start dealing with juveniles now that really reared its head last week, we need to call on the families to step up and 15, 16, 17-year-old, unacceptable. And so there's a lot of work to be done across the board. But in the meantime, we're going to keep working hard at what we're charged with, which is enforcing the laws and keeping the community safe. And Here's two instances. One ended up well, the other didn't. But we'll move on. Any other questions? All right. We'll conclude this. Lieutenant Becker is in the back there, and he's the content expert on your less lethal shotgun up here. And I thank you for coming.